I would like to begin this introduction with a thank you to all of my new subscribers and ask for a moment of your indulgence. If you don't already know, this is my second attempt at a media review channel after being unfairly demonetized the first go-round. This new venture is but a couple of months old, and around the middle of September, I was sitting at a modest 90 subscribers. But then I began releasing videos for the Rings of Power, and visibility and support, as well as some very kind compliments, grew at a rate I did not expect.
Thank you. You love me. You really love me.
Now, for those of you awaiting my next Rings of Power work, know that it is very much in the process of being developed, but in the meantime, I do have another review I wanted to share, one which was once the subject of a video I made some years back. It was okay for its time, but in rewatching it, I thought it could use quite a bit of work in both the script and the editing before sharing it here. But I also thought this review was appropriate since we happen to be entering the Halloween season, a time of the year which is very difficult for my pumpkin brethren. What's that? You thought the spice lattes and porch decorations were something we found flattering? How would you feel if every October your friends were carted out of Walmarts across the world only to have their faces carved like they'd upset the Inglorious Bastards?
I think this just might be my masterpiece.
In other words, what is a season of horror-based fun for you is far more miserable for me, and misery loves company. So in keeping with the seasonal theme of spookiness and to impart upon you lovely people some of my kind's trauma, I thought it would be fun for us to reminisce about that time almost a decade ago when one of cinema's most beloved supernatural comedies was misgendered and thrown into a women's prison. There are certain events in history that evoke the question, where were you? Where were you when man first set foot upon the moon? Where were you when President Kennedy prematurely revealed the plot of Oliver Stone's movie bearing his initials? Where were you on
9/11.
These events often cause one to recall the uncertainty they felt about what the world would look like the following day, how their lives might change, perhaps even a loss of innocence or the naivety in thinking we were safe. Such a moment came on July 11th, 2016 in cinematic form. Its release not only highlighting a growing divide between critics and audiences, but also Hollywood and its fans. But more than the immediate reaction to this film is what occurred in the years after, as it appears to have been the genesis of the woke cinematic onslaught we have yet to be fully relieved of, making it a Chernobyl-like event from which the fallout has yet to completely subside. I'm speaking, of course, of the attempted reboot of Ghostbusters, the so-called billion-dollar idea from Paul Feig where he would take the concept of the two films released back in the 80s and, wait for it, cast women instead of men.
Brilliant! Brilliant!
Now, to play devil's advocate and give a dash of credit where it's due, Paul Feig was no stranger to box office success. His comedy Bridesmaids grossed almost $290 million in 2011, while The Heat raked in just a shade under $230 2 years later. And then in 2015 he released Spy, and it pulled in a cool $234 million. Given the budgets of each of these works, it seems safe to say Paul's movies were making solid money and raking in profits. There was reason for him to be somewhat confident. And on top of the financial victories, critics were either liking or loving his work, and even audiences appeared more or less satisfied. So perhaps there was cause for him to believe a more estrogen-fueled Ghostbusters would be quite the financial score for him. Though what he seemed to either forget or not realize at all was that the difference between this and his other works was that they were more or less originals, whereas Ghostbusters is a long-established IP with certain standards for quality, both in terms of laughs and storytelling. Sequels to dormant franchises are tricky enough in and of themselves, but remakes and reboots are a fine line to walk and done so on a very tight rope. Unless, of course, you are Disney remaking your own cartoons with humans or computers. in which case the lemmings often come in droves and would run themselves right over the cliff if you didn't put a theater seat in their path. The original Ghostbusters was certainly not a perfect comedy, and much has been said in the negative about the sequel, which was rather clearly toned down for the kiddies. Yet Ghostbusters had still reached sacred cow status, and nobody wanted or needed anything else from it. That, by the way, includes the other two sequels, which came about as something of an apology for this movie. Now, I have not seen Afterlife or Frozen Empire, but nothing I have heard about them gives me any reason to want to watch them. That is, unless you dear people tell me you'd like for me to cover them as a follow-up to this video someday.
Please have mercy!
What I do know is that the original remains great. The sequel has its defenders, myself among them, and even the cartoon is remembered fondly by those who grew up with it. Yet as we know with almost all sacred cows is that those in charge of them tend to see fit to milk them down to the last drop before slaughtering the beast and selling the cuts to the highest bidder. If there were cries of hands off or signs reading do not touch placed around Ghostbusters, then they ultimately were ignored by Feig and the owners of this IP. It's actually quite ironic in hindsight that the tagline for this film was "Answer the call" when practically nobody was calling. And worse still than them shutting their ears to those requesting they leave well enough alone was the lack of any sense of respect for what came before, or for comedy in general. I think all of that and the all-female casting is why so many link Ghostbusters 2016 to the beginning of this culture war around woke content. It's far from the first film to have such ideological leanings, but this did represent one of the earliest and most well-known examples of a negative campaign aimed at dissatisfied fans. Articles aplenty were written about misogynist moviegoers, and they haven't completely let up in relation to this film. In fact, this came up again not too long ago when actress Leslie Jones claimed she faced death threats and racism which nearly broke her. Now, I have little doubt that various social media outlets have their fair share of silly people who say ugly things. But I also know that whatever group you most strongly identify with, be it political, religious, ethnic, or otherwise, you're almost certain to encounter such silly people who oppose you. These days, in fact, you need not identify with any particular lot at all. Disagree with the wrong person about the size and consistency of an old man's shit, and they'll lump you in with the German branch of the Axis powers.
Nazi!
Point being that Leslie would have done well to be Teflon rather than a sponge, assuming her claims happen to be true. That isn't to suggest outright that she's lying, but claims without receipts typically land about as well as a plane piloted by Indiana Jones or the actor playing him. But, as I've already alluded to, what's worse than the existence of this film or the terrible marketing campaign is what was to come. After Ghostbusters lost roughly $70 million at the box office, I think many of us might have naively convinced ourselves that this wouldn't become a trend. They had dipped their toes into these waters, and the piranhas had taken an entire foot and down to the bone. Surely, they wouldn't let such a thing become normalized. Now, while I've acknowledged it, this video is not intended to be about said culture war, but I thought it was important to recognize this movie's place in its history. It represents a moment when a virtue signal was cast into the sky and its call was answered with gender swapping, race swapping, pronouns, and hatred of all things white and male and hetero. I asked a moment ago where were you when this occurred, and you are free to say so in the comments. But as for me, I was initially content for many years not to bother with this movie at all. I was certainly as skeptical as any that it could be good, but back then my tendency was to let the dust settle before finding out for myself whether the hype or outrage was warranted. I was and am certainly no fan of the modern messaging movies which have been plaguing our cinemas, but I also know that sometimes narratives can overshadow reality. In other words, while I was very much aware of the culture war and that many considered this movie to be ground zero, I avoided finding out for myself if this little lump of cinema roll was worthy of this distinction for a full 7 years. And I'll admit that I sincerely thought that this probably wasn't going to be as bad as some of what I'd heard. I certainly didn't think I was about to see the film equivalent of having my fingernails stuck with bamboo shoots, or being waterboarded when I'm not even thirsty, or Ryan Reynolds' International Women's Day experience in Deadpool. But now, having experienced it, I think this movie should come with a Surgeon General's warning and laws against it amended into the 4 treaties of the Geneva Convention. If the original is the Mona Lisa, then think of the reboot as Paul Feig taking that masterpiece out of its protective casing to use as toilet paper, And if wokeness was indeed the cinematic apocalypse, then this movie was the biblical 7 bowls of wrath, with their contents consumed by Melissa McCarthy's character and sprayed upon the unsuspecting public. And with that beautiful image, let us examine this moment, when the shit hit the fans.
This is it. Don't get scared now.
The film opens with a guided tour of a place called the Aldridge Mansion. Get it? Aldridge? Eldritch? It's very clever. Our guide tells a tale of the home's former owner and the posh lifestyle he lived and guests he entertained, including the famous P.T. Barnum, who apparently got the idea to enslave elephants while visiting.
An attempt at humor, I suppose.
He then tells of the owner's daughter, who one night went off crazier than usual and killed all of the servants, and the family reacted by locking her away in the basement to avoid the public besmirching of their name. My own parents had to do much the same with me, but only until I was old enough to move out, and at least the radiator was pretty cozy. He shows them the door to the basement and tells them that it hasn't been opened ever since the daughter's remains were removed. Oh, so she didn't escape? I wonder who narked the family secret. Then a candle spookily falls to the ground, and as it is picked up, we see a strange device on the floor. After the guests leave, we see that the candle was a trick to sell the home's haunted reputation, but just as the guide is having a laugh to himself about it, the true scaries begin as the exits are blocked by an unseen entity. He foolishly enters the basement whose door has never been opened. Then the floors bubble with Slimer's gender fluids, and the guide screams at an off-screen horror, and then the familiar theme swells and we get our title card.
Yes!
Maisie?
Just like old times. Cut over to Columbia University, where we meet Dr. Erin Gilbert, played by Kristen Wiig. She tells her boyfriend she has a lecture in the big hall, and he replies by asking,
This is what you're wearing?
So far, with our male characters, we have a cowardly con man and an unaffectionate boyfriend whose honesty, I'm sure, is unappreciated by this film. No worries, though. I'm sure not every male in the movie is a dick.
Come on, let's keep a little optimism.
She begins to practice her lesson, but soon is approached by someone from the Aldridge Mansion who claims it to be haunted. She tries to deflect any interest in what he's talking about, but he shows her a book about the subject, which she apparently co-authored. Dr. Gilbert asks how he managed to get a copy, and he shows her, much to her horror, that it is for sale on Amazon. The reason for her dismay is because she is up for tenure, and any association with such silliness would certainly jeopardize her chances. Then she meets with the dean, played by Charles Dance, and he makes a similar remark as Erin's boyfriend about how she is dressed, as well as telling her that her recommendation from Princeton just isn't that impressive.
And I would consider getting a referral from a more prestigious college.
Exactly. What kind of retard would take pride in an Ivy League recommendation? As a side note, please get a better agent, Charles. I'm begging you. You're too good to be wasted in this kind of movie. Erin goes over to a far less prestigious college to see Abby, her former best friend, played by Melissa McCarthy, who happens to be the other author of the book, and Erin asks her to stop selling it so it will not affect her prospects. While there, we also get to meet Abby's new friend and lab partner, the perpetually quirky Holtzman, played by the painfully unfunny Kate McKinnon. After suffering through a fart prank which might have actually been a queef,
Oh, that's nasty.
Erin agrees to go to the Aldridge Mansion with Abby and Holtzman in exchange for the book being taken off the interwebs. And it's there the ladies meet their first ghost. Erin is filmed shouting "Ghosts are real" by Holtzman, and the video ends up online. And of course, her boss sees it almost immediately, and she is fired. Oh, and as she is leaving the building and exacerbating her own humiliation, her boyfriend acts as though he doesn't know her. So I suppose that relationship is now over. Abby and Holtzman are fired from their university soon after, and we get a hilarious middle finger demonstration from the dean, which refuses to end.
Suck it.
Why do I feel like this is aimed at us? The ladies pull together, set up shop in what was formerly a Chinese restaurant, and attempt to make a business of catching ghosts. Following this, we meet Patty, who works at Subway. No, not the restaurant, a station. No, that's Penn Station, a subway station. This character is played by Leslie Jones. She encounters an odd fellow and then chases him down the tracks after she spots him sneaking over to them. We see a familiar device from the film's opening, and then Patty encounters a ghost and flees for her life. Speaking of that creepy guy whom we know within seconds as the villain, we next get some time with him at his little base of operations in the hotel he works at as a maintenance man. He speaks of how he was bullied, but soon the world will bend to his will. Let's take the information we have about this fellow and discern what we can. Sneaky, bullied, lonely job, working from inside of a closet, so perhaps secretly gay, desires submission, not exactly giving off the Chad vibes to attract the opposite sex. I think I got it! He's an incel.
Oh my god!
The ladies, meanwhile, decide to hire themselves a receptionist, and the lone applicant is a fellow named Kevin, played by Chris Hemsworth. And will Kevin finally inject this movie with a respectable and masculine figure? Nope. Kevin's characteristics are as follows. I guess the writers thought that would be funny. And by the way, I don't use ridiculously as a haphazard adjective. Forrest Gump is a Rhodes Scholar compared to poor Kevin here.
You know what? I would love to let your cat live here with you, but I have a pretty severe cat allergy.
Oh, I don't have a cat. He's a dog. His name's my cat.
I read somewhere that Chris received a $10 million payday for this part, so at least there's that. Then again, this is only the second most humiliating role we've seen him in. Kevin is hired despite his mental shortcomings because when Aaron sees him,
clean up on aisle 5.
Though as annoying as the double standard is, Abby having the audacity to pretend she doesn't understand the attraction to Kevin is frankly insulting. This dude has more than enough physically aspirational qualities, as well as a few God-given ones to be deemed hot.
You've been spending too much time with these females. What? They're dragging you over to their side. Their way of thinking. My people call it gay.
Now before we continue with this movie's plot, let's go over some of the happenings thus far. Lone worker gets attacked by a spirit off-screen. Group of university friends investigate and are spooked by a ghost. Investigation followed by removal from said universities.
Suck it.
Friends set up shop, friends hire receptionists. Does any of this sound familiar? This is Paul Feig's billion-dollar idea so far. Copy, paste, and Photoshop the first 20 minutes of the original, swap the main men with women, replace Janine with a cartoonishly imbecilic Chris Hemsworth, and trade actual comedy for...
I wonder if it's loaded. No.
Patty arrives and immediately tells the ladies a bit of history about the restaurant they are now inhabiting, as if somebody had her memorize the backstory of this establishment off of a Wikipedia page. It's basically the movie's way of telling us how informed she is about the layout of the city. Very subtle. She tells them about the ghost that chased her on the subway, then takes them to the spot where it happened. Oh, and here's a fun detail. She leads them onto the tracks literally minutes before the next train is to arrive. Oh, but this is only the beginning. You'll soon see that there is in fact quite a pattern of reckless behavior in this film, but we'll get to that in just a moment. Patty's ghost appears again and they attempt to capture it, managing even to wrap the proton pack stream around it. However, the scheduled train then appears and not only destroys their equipment, but splatters the ghost. No, it doesn't kill it, but it does go through, and then as the train leaves them, we see the ghost is stuck in the back.
That doesn't make sense.
So if the front of the train went through the ghost, then why not the back of the train?
It's just dumb!
Patty ultimately joins the team, and it just so happens her uncle owns a funeral home, so she ends up providing them with this film's version of the trademark hearse. Soon after, they make their way into a back alley to test their equipment, and we get another example of recklessness. Abby is instructed on how to use the proton pack, and when she fires at the target, it completely explodes, which indicates just how dangerous these things are. She loses control of it and is carried this way and that with the pack still firing all around. Now, I understand that this being a comedy, we're to be treated to a fair amount of absurdity, but is this film not obliged to follow its own set of rules? These things are really deadly. It would stand to reason that her friends might duck for cover. Yet their idea of such protection is standing beside a pair of dumpsters while Holtzman says that they'll just have to let Abby ride it out until she's out of juice. Is taking her finger off of the trigger out of the question?
What's wrong with you people?
What's funny is that they actually had a legitimate chance to one-up the original film in this respect. If you recall, when Peter, Ray, and Egon ride up the elevator to face Slimer, Ray says they haven't yet tested their equipment. Yet that film manages to prevent this from becoming a flaw because they act in accordance with their inexperience and treat the equipment with a good amount of fear and respect as they learn to use it. If this scene in the reboot were to have occurred before the subway sequence and had the ladies displayed a similar amount of respect and fear, you could argue they were showing more intelligence about their own gadgets than the men. Yet as this scene and later ones will clearly show, these characters are significantly stupider, even if the film won't admit it. After a brief shot of Incel Man arriving at a metal concert, there's a little getting to know you scene where Erin tells the story about how as a little girl, she had to go to therapy and endure bullying for a long time because she saw a ghost every night for a year and nobody but Abby believed her. Now, if you have not noticed, I have yet to bring up when and how the broken friendship of Erin and Abby was resolved. This scene appears to be a good place for that to happen. At least that's what I thought the first time I watched this, but then I noticed that there already appears to be no lingering hostility. And it's because there isn't. The friendship, which one would think could be a means to develop both characters and create a relationship we might care about over the course of the movie, really isn't used for much of anything. And then, as if to shine a larger spotlight on this missed opportunity, we're treated to this little bit of fun.
Ghosts! They're real!
Lord have mercy.
I really need higher windows. The ladies then watch a news story where the video of the subway ghost is shown, and it is here that they are given the moniker Ghostbusters. But their credibility is questioned by a quote-unquote famed debunker who is played by one William Murray, whom you might recognize from previous films such as Lost in Translation, Groundhog Day, Scrooge, Rushmore, Zombieland, and I could have sworn there was one more. Ah yes, Ghostbusters. Yes, Ghostbusters 1 and 2, which gives us our first living cameo. I didn't want to bring it up, but not even poor deceased Harold Ramis managed to escape this mess. But at least he doesn't have to see it. Poor Mr. Murray, on the other hand, is brought in to act as a Rian Johnson-level subversion. He's gone from playing the ghost catcher to the ghost debunker. Aren't we clever, movie?
Oh, good for you!
The phone rings and the ladies are summoned to the metal concert Incel Man was seen at just a moment ago and where a spook is apparently on the loose. Of course, before they can leave, we get a rather useless scene where Erin's boyfriend and her break up. And here I thought him ignoring her after she was fired was more than enough to tell us that the relationship was over. And yet the film insists we need a full 2 more minutes of her telling him off, complete with Abby and Patty wondering how sexy he dances.
I just want it to stop.
Holtzman pulls up in the hearse, which is painted to look like the familiar Ghostmobile from the previous movies. They head to the theater and we get treated to a rather horrendous rendition of the Ghostbusters theme.
Shut up! Shut up! Shut up! Shut up!
At the concert, the ladies get their own version of the original's hotel job, except it is significantly stupider. Abby finds another one of the electrical devices we've been seeing while Patty gets chased by a possessed mannequin. You know, it's bad enough that every man in this movie is awful, but even the mannequins? Come on, we're just being petty. They manage to expel the spirit from it, and it appears to be more of a demon than a ghost. Are these the same in this movie? Would they even operate under the same rules?
Don't ask questions.
Whatever, it makes its way into the actual concert, and the ladies begin firing off their proton packs to try to catch it. doing so very close to the crowd of hundreds of people, I might add. I already talked about how the original Ghostbusters showed the male characters to be somewhat reckless as well when they came into a job without having tested their proton packs. But even there, we see them clear rooms of people and give themselves space to operate. And this was before we saw that the streams didn't come out in straight lines. It is difficult to aim the streams, and doing so close to a crowd or so near your own teammate's head seems to me to be a very bad idea. Of course, they capture the monster without any casualties, so the women are allowed to appear competent without having to work for it. The crowd celebrates the Ghostbusters, and the news does as well, while Incel Man grumbles angrily to himself in a diner while watching the news. Oh, and back with the ladies, we get another dance sequence because f*** you. Thankfully, we are all rescued by the famed debunker himself. He asks why they're pretending to catch ghosts, and when they insist that they are scientists and not frauds, he does the Walter Peck impersonation and asks to see it. Now, in order for him to see this creature, the ladies will have to release it, and then try to recapture it in this little confined room. The many problems with this idea should already be obvious. Surely such a demonstration would destroy most of their workspace even if the attempt to recapture proves successful. And in the event that they are not successful, do I even need to go over the danger to human life? Please tell me they're not going to do this. Abby tells Debunker Man that he won't be seeing the ghost, but Erin appears to be reluctant to give the containment apparatus back, which means she's so peeved that she's willing to risk their work, their equipment, and their lives just to own the chud. Abby tries to talk her down a bit while the others grab their proton packs and... yep. Erin releases the monster, and this time someone does get hurt. Bill Murray dies. He literally dies.
It's not true. Tell me it's not true. It's true.
And Erin is 100% responsible for killing him, which would make her friends accessories to this little bit of manslaughter. But unfortunately, the extent of the consequences of her actions do not lead to an arrest. The Ghostbusters literally get away with murder. And as the police are questioning the killers, Mayor Andy Garcia comes calling, summoning them to his estate. They're told the city is very much appreciative of their efforts, but that they need to stop because Homeland Security is on the case, and the ladies are drawing too much attention to the situation. And the preference is to keep things hush-hush as to not create a state of panic. Well, Mr. Mayor, you literally just pulled them from the scene of a homicide. Seems the best method to get them out of your way would be to allow justice to take its course. That would have actually solved both your problem and my problem. 2 birds, 1 cup. Wait, is that the saying? Instead, he tells them that his office will be utilizing the media to wreck their reputation. What, am I not doing a good enough job? They take another turn in the back alley for more weapons tests, now trying out ghost grenades and ghost shredders, as well as a hand-to-hand proton glove. And yes, every one of the objects are just as stupid as they sound. Egon's actor is no longer with us, yet they could not resist making his estrogenic replacement smarter and more innovative. They go back to their lab and begin mapping out all of the spots where the ghosts have been sighted. Erin has an epiphany and realizes that these are all occurring across what she calls ley lines, which are hidden currents of supernatural energy. The devices Incel Man has been setting up, she now understands are being used to charge the ley lines in order to create a vortex and break down the barrier between the human world and the ghost world. And speaking of Incel Man, once the ladies realize that the ley lines intersect at a hotel, they pull up its website and Patty recognizes him from the staff photo as the person she chased in the subway. They head over to the hotel to confront him, and when they get to the reception desk, we get another sad cameo. Hello there, Annie Potts. I am so sad you could make it, and I hope you were paid well for your pain and suffering. They face up with Incel Man in his closet lab, and he gives a monologue about being a scorned genius. But he's not the only one who has been shunned by society. So have the spirits he plans to unleash, who similarly see the world as garbage that needs cleansing.
They're mostly dudes.
Even the ghosts are toxic male incels? Well, how did he manage that? Did he have Beetlejuice write him up a help wanted ad with the qualifier that they must be an angry virgin? It's just... what the fuck? He makes to unleash his ghost army, but they talk him down, telling him it's over because the police are coming. Probably not realizing how relaxed the arrest standards are in this movie, he surprises them all by grabbing the power lines and giving himself the same treatment Hassan Piker gives to his dog.
Allegedly. But also, really.
In the aftermath, Abby notices the similarities between his technology and their own, and they discover that he has been studying the book she and Aaron wrote. The Ghostbusters are then arrested as per the mayor's promise, and their not-so-good names are smeared on the news. Aaron, now at home and feeling down on her luck and probably her syndrome, begins to thumb through Incel Man's copy of her book and finds out that dying was part of his plan all along, as he has now transformed into a malevolent spirit. At the lab, Incel Man's ghost enters Abby without her consent, and in a rather disgusting visual, she begins to ooze green goo as if he and a group of Slimers gave her the first inside-out bukkake.
Yeah, well, that's disgusting.
With Incel Man now in possession of her body, Abby begins to destroy equipment and even almost kills Holtzman. If only we were so lucky. Patty manages to slap the spirit out of her like a modern faith healer, but it enters into Kevin, who unlike Abby does not leak the green goo. So much for him being deeply closeted, I guess, though I am happy that I don't have to see that visual again. Incel Man leaves in his upgraded body to begin causing his long-awaited mayhem. He arrives back at the hotel, takes out a couple of officers, and then powers up his machine and unleashes his unholy horde of horrors, which in turn leaves it up to the unholy horde of horrors to save the city. Erin, who has yet to catch up with her friends, hails a cab but catches a cameo from Dan Aykroyd instead, who drops the saddest bit of fan service thus far.
Look, I don't go to Chinatown, I don't drive Wacos, and I ain't afraid of no ghosts.
The other three, meanwhile, park the Echo 1 and come upon another cameo. And because the ladies left their keys in the car, Slimer is able to steal it from them. And as he's recklessly driving it, Holtzman tells them not to shoot at the car because it's basically a nuclear reactor. And why is your car a nuclear reactor? Am I supposed to like these characters more for being dangerous idiots? It's their most prominent character quality, and it's more than reached the point of being insufferable, especially because the movie seems to want me to celebrate these women as heroes rather than the heedless harpies they truly are. They literally got a man killed earlier, and now they just let a ghost steal a nuclear reactor because they left the keys in the car. If this were any kind of normal society, it would not matter one iota if they save the city. They would be locked up for the rest of their lives, and deservedly so. But instead, this is played for a laugh.
Well, we just gave a ghost a nuke. We should probably run.
I am so rooting for the nuke. The ladies are next attacked by ghost balloons, with one even resembling the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. But Aaron arrives just in time to save them. These awful cameos are bad enough, but you even had to insult the f***ing Marshmallow Man?
Boom. Roasted.
Probably because he has man in his name. Police and other such authorities gather around the hotel, and Incel Man uses his ghostly powers to make everyone dance. I've already lost count of the number of dance sequences, but whatever the opposite of the Thriller video is, that's the scene. The Ghostbusters arrive and battle the spooky army, and apparently, capturing ghosts is no longer necessary. They can be knocked out or killed again. Because gadgets! That's how this works now.
What the fuck is this?
They finally get to Incel Man, and he leaves the body of their receptionist. They demand he show himself, and he asks them in what form they'd prefer.
Well, I tell you what I prefer. I prefer something nice and cute.
And he turns into the f***ing logo. Even the cartoon form of it. Did they see that as some kind of homage? How does becoming a cartoon even work? They flee, somehow getting a really far distance away from the monster rather quickly, then cross the streams and fire into the vortex. They say beforehand that they'll likely be killed horribly by doing so, but much to my disappointment, nothing even remotely close to this promise ever occurs. Their efforts aren't enough to stop Incel Man, but they then spot Slimer in the nuke car, who conveniently drives right into the vortex, and they shoot the car, and the vortex becomes a giant ghost trap, sucking in all of the stray spirits. Incel Man holds on, but a few well-placed shots to the dick cause him to lose his grip and head right into his swirly doom. He grabs Abby on his way down, and Aaron spots a conveniently placed hook and line nearby and dives in after her, ultimately saving her life. And it should be noted that this shot is supposed to be the two of them falling down, not sideways. They pop out of the vortex with white hair for some reason, which they change in the following scene. Not even their hair faces permanent consequences. The day is saved, and the Ghostbusters are then given government sponsorship, meaning the tax dollars of US citizens will now fund 4 of the most vile and dangerous women on the planet. Sadly, that's not so unbelievable. Ernie Hudson shows up as Patty's uncle, and in the credits, so does Sigourney Weaver as Holtzman's former mentor. And thankfully, mercifully, the movie is now over. Oh wait, there's an after-credit scene too?
I heard something really weird. What's Zool?
Where do I even begin to sum this up? What exactly is the secret sauce that makes this such an especially disastrous motion picture? Is it the awful special effects which remove any sense of scariness from the ghosts? Well, that certainly undermines the movie to an extent, but I don't think that's it. How about the lengthy 2-hour and 13-minute runtime of this extended edition? That's almost a full half-hour longer and somehow accomplished infinitely less. With all the cringe dance sequences and pathetic attempts at humor, it's hard not to see that as one of the chief culprits. Or how about the acting? Well, there certainly isn't anything to praise about the performances, but I also wouldn't necessarily go too hard against them either. None are good, mind you, but even the ones I'd call bad have less to do with the actors and more to do with how their characters are, well, characterized. Bad writing, after all, is difficult to overcome. And I think it's with the writing that we've landed upon the problem. It is without question the film's biggest issue, as it attacks your senses on every front. Whether it's Patty's Wikipedia-inspired exposition, Holtzman's unbearable quirkiness, Aaron simping over the preposterously moronic Kevin, Abby's shtick where she whines about wontons, or the pathetic excuse for a villain, every moment these characters speak makes me long for the operatic melodies of nails on a chalkboard. And yes, I am counting all of the improv this movie is quote-unquote famous for as part of that writing. It made it into the final script after all. Ghostbusters is an uninteresting, unfunny, unendearing, and unforgivable experience. This isn't a reimagining or even a proper reboot. It is a concept being devoured, digested, and defecated onto the cinematic landscape with a familiar label slapped onto the pile. Long story short, my thanks to all for watching. Your time is both valuable and greatly appreciated, and I hope to see you again next time. Until then, God bless and Godspeed.
Who you gonna call? Someone else.